Shamima Begum had her British citizenship revoked, and she wants to return to the UK in order to argue to have that decision overturned. I've got Omar X with me. He's usually got a strong opinion on most things. What do you make of this situation, Omar?
I think this is a young lady that was groomed by these terrorists online. She
Mm.
ended up heading off to Turkey, and then from there, she somehow managed to get to Syria, completely brainwashed, had no idea what she was doing. She was in that country for a while, and her first husband was killed, her second husband was killed. She's had two kids, she's had three kids, even two of them have died. She has lost more. She's even lost her family, her kids, her unborn child is, I'm sure, is nowhere near her. And the tragedy here is that this is a young girl. If she was of any other faith, and if she was of any other color, perhaps they would ask her to be in this country. Rather, they are banning her from being in this country, seemingly.
Well, Asmil Muzamil, he looks a similar colour to Shamima Begum, possibly, and he's saying no, she should not be allowed back. So, why has race got anything to do with it? Was Jihadi Jack allowed to return?
I
He
don't
was
know much about.
a white jihadist that went to Syria like an idiot. Was he allowed to
Well,
return? I believe they tried to send him to Canada. Anyone with any other nationality, it seems to me, the British state will try to revoke their British citizenship because they cannot render someone stateless. So if someone like Shamima Begum of a Bangladeshi background goes out there, they're going to try and send her back to Bangladesh. If Jihadi Jack, as white as he was or is, has a Canadian citizenship, they will try and uh, lumber Canada with him, which is no act of kindness to Canada. But you can understand why the United Kingdom wouldn't want jihadists in their country.
well, Jihadi Jack was actually, I'm sure he was born in Canada, and his parents were Canadian also, although he grew up
Mm.
in England.
Mm.
You're right, they didn't allow him into this country, and he is now intending to go back to Canada. But back on Shamima Begum, I'm surprised that Asmil, who you said is probably the same color as her, is actually stating
By the
this.
looks of it, and by the looks of his name, Asmil Muzammil is saying she deserves it. She chose her path. It's good she's banned from entering the UK. Yeah, I think we're all
Well, it,
safer, aren't
well,
we,
it.
if
I
jihadists
mean,
can't get back into the country?
I want to say to Asmal that, it's really disgrace hearing this before you are a Muslim and before you are British, seemingly, and before you even are a Bangladeshi. Perhaps if you are from Bangladesh or Asian, remember that you are brown. You are the same color possibly as her,
Sorry, Asmil,
and you
we're
should.
judging you on your name here and your picture. God knows who you are. You might be a blonde lady from Sweden. We don't know. But
I expect solidarity from people who look like her and from people who are the same color or similar
it's nothing
color
to do with
from.
color, Omar. It's to do with people that think like her, and unfortunately, she was thinking in a very radical manner that would pose a threat to people in this country and pose a threat to people in Syria. And
The
I
reason
guess, go on.
the reason I mentioned the color is because we have a similar culture with her. We understand how a young person who is not allowed to be free many a time. I'm not saying this is the case in every Asian household, but we understand the young girls, they're not really free. They don't understand Islam. We understand the culture clash that we have of Islam. And the reason I say the Asians should understand this a bit better. And, we have this background, we have this faith, and anyone can be trapped. And if we have that heritage, surely we should have more solidarity. If it was a white person, perhaps they won't understand what she went through, coming from a different culture and a different
Well, I
faith.
don't
As
think I
somebody
don't
who,
think we should have solidarity with people based on the color of their skin. I don't have solidarity with Edward Colston because he was a white man. I know
well,
some people are very tribal like that. I think we can do better than that. And
no,
should we
when
not?
well, this we should. I'm not judging her based solely on her color. I'm saying that the reason we should have solidarity is because we grew up in a similar manner and we understand that there's sensitivity here. Plus,
But
if she had
when
murdered
you
100 people,
oh, hang on a
now,
minute.
now
So
we're missing the point. We're
if
missing the
people of
point.
different no. I want to ask you something specific. If a certain person commits a crime, do you alter your attitude to that crime based on the color of their skin? Because that's what it sounds like you're suggesting.
On the contrary, sir, she is not a criminal. This is an innocent human being. And as someone who comes from a similar background as her, I feel a solidarity. And equally, if she was white,
She's not an
unlike your,
innocent. She's not an innocent human being, and she admitted she made mistakes. She apologized. She admitted that she did wrong. Now,
well, she did wrong, but they say two wrongs don't make a right. But what severity depends what severity the wrongs are. She didn't kill anyone. She didn't murder anyone. Her her apology is accepted, but what did she really do? She left this country and she headed off to Turkey and then went on to Syria. At what age? She was 15 years of age. And who was she talking to on the internet? What was her crime? In fact, at that time, were we not told that? And this is why I'm taken aback that at that time they were almost encouraging people to go and defend or fight against the
well,
Syrian regime. It seems.
we'll come to that in a moment. As Mulmazam was saying, similar culture and similar color is childish talk. She didn't even care for her own parents before going to live among ISIS. And Granuil is saying well said and pointing out that she stole her sister's passport and she grew up in the UK and knew right from wrong. Yeah, and look, there has been a wrong committed. She has admitted that she did wrong. So I think we need to follow the rule of law uh, here. And part of what makes this a great country and a great civilization is that we have rule of law based on consensus. We haven't gone back 1,000 years and tried to lay down barbaric laws. We've refined our laws through the democratic process over hundreds of years, and there is rule of law. There is also international law. And if a crime is committed in Syria, and this is the argument, I think, for not returning Shamima Begum and others home, is that if a crime is committed in Syria, are we not undermining the Syrian state if we buck that person out of the country when really you should be tried in the country where you committed the crime? That's why people go on the run from the place where they've committed the crime. And pay no attention is saying into the arms of oppressors, what an idiot. And that is a fair comment. Our good friend PK is saying, I heard she was part of an enforcement wing of ISIS. Yeah, quite possibly. I mean, goodness, if there are bad wings of ISIS to be a part of, maybe that's the worst one, but they're all pretty horrendous people, aren't they? ISIS and the other terrorist groups that have overrun that country. I don't know why ISIS get this special limelight. There are many lunatic elements in that country that attempted to overthrow the state and then started killing each other. And as someone once said, the moderate rebels only chop half your head off. As Mulmazam was saying,
Well, I
going
don't
to an
know.
enemy nation to fight for the evil satanic ISIS must be considered as a crime. PK is saying, if you hate the West, why should she come back to the West? Well, only if perhaps there is, and this is where British law may be at odds with Syrian law. Um, I wonder, but if we don't follow the law and follow it consistently, then we're just picking and choosing, and then you'll get situations where people like yourself will say, "Oh, what if she was a white person? What if she was a white guy like Jihadi Jack?" I think the trouble here is if we can't render someone stateless. That's a law. So it's kind of a loophole if you then say, well,
Well, you
because she's
can.
entitled. Well, it's illegal though. It's illegal to render
Well,
an
this is
individual
what the
stateless.
government did. So what you're saying is the government did something
No,
illegal,
but
and this is why
no,
she
they
has an
no
appeal.
no no. They've used a loophole in the law because of her entitlement to Bangladeshi citizenship to say, well, we're not rendering her stateless. She can go and get a passport from Bangladesh and let Bangladesh uh,
In
deal
a
with
country
deal
that she
with her.
hasn't been to. In a country she hasn't been to, Bangladesh.
I know, but she retains the right of citizenship in that country,
Mm. Her
and
parents.
that's a loophole. Just like Jihadi Jack, who
Mm,
has a Canadian background, but if
mm.
somebody of
But
of
Bangla,
entirely British stock went to fight in Syria, and I'm sure many did, um,
yeah.
they would not be able to render them stateless if they didn't have this entitlement to another uh, citizenship. I am a dual citizen, so if I go abroad, I might have one of my passports taken away from me.
Well, the passport, the Bangladesh government, she had a British passport, of course, but she didn't have a Bangladeshi passport or anything as such. She hadn't even been to the country, and the Bangladeshi government at that time rejected her entering the country. They said, "Look, should we accept her? We have no reason to." So back to square one now. But the reason she has an appeal now is it seems she has a case for appeal, and also alongside this, what we're missing is that in this country, people are innocent until proven guilty,
Hmm.
and
That's one of the good things
and
about
so
this
we've
country.
judged. Yeah, so everyone's made a case, and the Home Secretary Sajid Javid at the time, he said that that's it. I'm going to revoke her citizenship, and I'm happy that no one revokes his family's citizenship or revokes his citizenship also.
Mm.
But saying this, you are right. This is straight up illegal to render someone stateless. Now, if the Bangladeshi government have said, look, we don't want her, we're not having her. And then where does that leave her then? She is rendered stateless. So she has a case, and the lawyers are intending to bring her back, at the very least, for her to make an appeal, and she has a right to appeal in this case also.
Mm. PK is saying a country broken with no law and order will breed evil and allow that to fester. Well, there is law and order in Syria, luckily. The parts of Syria where law and order has broken down are the bits that were overrun by the terrorist hordes that swept in through the border when Erdogan let them all in and set them upon Bashar al-Assad like dogs. People talk about Bashar al-Assad having dogs as well, and he's no angel. But
Well, 30 years, his father has been.
out of the frying pan into the fire.
Hmm.
Sorry, go ahead, Omar. You're going to talk about
Well,
Hafez al-Assad.
yes, that man ruled Syria for 30 years, and now his son has been in charge for 20 years. And this all started at the Arab Spring time. He just wasn't having it. And as he lay in bed and discussed this at the coffee table with his British wife, a woman who left London, who was a hotshot, I believe, and they had their discussions. And it hurts that even a woman from this country, they didn't improve the country. They just allowed it
Oh,
to spiral and
she's a
spiral
woman
until
of
now.
Syrian background. Look, we've got a caller, so I'm going to welcome
Yeah.
them. Hello, caller. Who's this? I hope we can hear you. We're experimenting here.
Hello, this is PK.
Hi, PK. I'm okay. Thank you for calling, and I hope our listeners will be able to hear you. We're trying a new system, as you can see. What's your take on this?
Well, it's quite an interesting situation. because she was so young. I
Mm.
mean, she was a child, really,
Mm.
wasn't she?
Mm.
And obviously, when you're a child, the way you process information and how you behave differs greatly from the transition into adulthood. We all know that. And even as a young man, I've differed greatly. I'm now I'm over 50 now, so I've differed greatly in my time, as you will have had. However, I think where this is very difficult is we have a situation where there's war going on, and various terrorist organisations fighting against supposed Western supremacy or imperialism, if you like.
Well, actually, in that country, the terrorists are fighting against Bashar al-Assad, an Arab nationalist aligned with Iran, who would be on the side of Russia. They're not really fighting the West over there. And in fact, some people said they were fighting on behalf of the West.
Yeah. Sorry,
initially.
I stand corrected.
No, it's all right. I mean, but if you ask them, they might think they are fighting for the West. They might say, yeah, we want to annihilate. They want to annihilate everybody, these people, including the West and the East.
Very good observation. Thank you for correcting me, Julian. What I meant by that was that the fact she's a British citizen that has only probably sort of seen the propaganda which has made her to think and to then act.
Yeah.
Because she's been told that we in the West and Britain is complicit and all of this sort of stuff. So she's gone out there. I think more likely for those reasons, because of the Iraq war, the Afghani war, and recently before the Syrian conflict.
Yeah.
So makes sense.
It does, but you see, it's funny where these jihadists like to go. If you look at the history of foreign jihadists traveling, they went to Afghanistan to fight against Russia, one of America's enemies. They fought in Bosnia. They traveled to Bosnia to protect the Bosnian Muslims against the Serbs, one of Russia's allies again. They're pretty big on fighting in Chechnya against the Russians. Why do they always go to fight against America's enemies? That's what I don't understand, because there's a lot of Muslims being killed in many places. Burma's being the Muslims in Burma are under a lot of oppression. There's no jihad in Burma. There's no jihad in the Central African Republic where Muslims are being killed. So they seem to pick and choose where they go. Just something I've noticed. And then they come home and then kill the people that sent them there. It's like the Frankenstein's monster. You create a monster and then it comes back to kill you.
Okay. I've got a theory on this.
Go on then.
What you're saying, and I think it's the same with Western ex-Western military personnel who become mercenaries.
Okay.
And there's a certain type of person that likes conflict.
Right.
That likes being in that environment.
Okay.
And perhaps if we look at it in a more holistic way, a bigger picture is this, and this is an observation. I'm not saying it's a fact. It's open for discussion and debate, and I'd love to hear some of the viewpoints from anyone listening. And it's this: it's that if we say that there's certain types of mindsets, some people are just very naturally peaceful. Some people get excitement from very adrenaline-related things, and that could be sport. Other people get the big adrenaline rush, let's say, from violence, and the ultimate violence is, as we know, war. So perhaps people who have that type of personality gravitate, and as they gravitate to these focus points, they enhance those focus points, so they become these hotspots where that type of psyche can explore that environment. And what I mean by that is also committing the atrocities that people commit, because it's almost like you get in that environment where there is no law and there is no order, and you know, in these war places, the Geneva Convention often falls by the way. We know that,
Yeah.
And they can then express that evil side of their being in that environment without fear, or pretty much without fear of retribution. I'm just putting it out there. What do you think, Julian?
I love it when you go down the psychological route. I mean, some people go around America chasing after tornadoes. God knows why. And
they're exciting.
Yeah, they enjoy the thrill of that. I mean, there is something thrilling. Someone once said to me, and it's an odd thing to say, that being in a war zone is an aphrodisiac, because you think you're going to die, and your mind programs you to replicate yourself, to reproduce and have children. So there is a lot of sick and twisted things that go on in these war zones. And maybe and remember, a lot of people went to Syria for different reasons. You had people, jihadists, going for jihad. You had people joining the PKK. I think you mentioned mercenaries,
yes,
who really are motivated by money. But there were also some people that were kind of ideologues, thinking, well, I'm going to go and fight ISIS. Who's fighting ISIS? Oh, the Peshmerga, the Kurdish fighters. Now, I don't know why people are so desperate to join the Peshmerga rather than join the Russians and the Syrians, who are already combating ISIS and others in a very organized way. But the Peshmerga seem to be this poster boys of resistance. And yeah, I've got a good mind. I spoke to an ex-soldier chap who's gone down the teaching route, and he said, when I see on that TV what's going on out there, I've got a good mind to go and join the Peshmerga. But he didn't say join the Syrian army or the Russian army. For some reason, the Kurds, who don't have a state, who are not as organized as the other nation states that are combating ISIS, they are like seen as this sort of, club you can join and go and fight for.
Could I just stop you there? You seem quite knowledgeable, a lot more knowledgeable than I am.
Well, we're all learning together.
The Kurds are on the Turkish border. Am I correct?
That's correct. So Kurdish people are an ethnic group that don't have a homeland. Well, they don't have a state. So their homeland is exactly as you say, the Turkish border. They're in Syria, even in Iran, and a lot of Iraq. So they never got a state, but they live in that region.
I've got an observation, which would be this: does every ethnicity group, that is of a significant number, have the right to say, that's, for example, say, does any national group or ethnicity group of a significant number have the right to say, this is our homeland, and we decide who comes into it and who comes out of it, and how many immigrants come in and how many immigrants go out? So there is a balance. In other words, that the group, regardless of whether they're Arab, Western, European, or whatever, the group feel like they have a base, a homeland, and they should feel secure in that homeland, and therefore that would make them, it would make everybody have a base they could go to. If, say, for example, you don't really like a certain ethnicity group, for whatever reason, because there is historical conflicts which some people can't let go of, then you could go to your homeland knowing that you're free from other, mass immigration from others, perhaps. I mean, I don't really know if I'm wording it.
No, I see what you're getting at. I mean, the nation state, it's an idea that's only about 100 years old, and it was a new idea then, and I think it's out of date already, because we don't.
Yeah, hang on, before you say,
go on.
Stop,
yeah.
Interrupt. But the tribe as an extension of family and group is not out of date, and the nation state surely is just an extension of that.
Well, and a tribe, you can opt to join a tribe, right? If you want to call the British identity, a tribe. I think lots of different ethnicities have come here, the Celts, the Anglo-Saxons, and many more. And if we all adopt a British identity with another, I mean, like in America, you can quite easily be an Italian American, an Irish American, an African American. Some people don't like the term, but the bottom line is they're all American, and they can all be patriotic about that identity, and not negate their own culture. Does that make sense?
Someone else want to come in there?
Well, Omar's there. Omar, are you hearing everything PK is saying?
Not particularly. I wanted to ask something. Thank you for your call, PK. I wanted to ask you if this was happening to a white girl coming from Romania, if she was put
okay, Omar, stop. Because PK can't hear you. PK, Omar was going to ask you if this was happening to a white girl, do you think we would be having the same conversation?
Yes, I do. Because for me, it's not about the colour of a person.
No, which is why I brought up Jihadi Jack, and we had the same situation with Jihadi Jack.
My question
because he's Canadian. Omar, you'll have to wait. We'll get you back in shortly, Omar, because PK's not going to hear you.
I'd like to ask Omar this question.
Go on, PK.
And Omar's a different ethnicity to me. But I'd ask this to everybody. But
you must be from a different tribe in Pakistan.
I am a different
I'm joking.
tribe, yeah. I'm from the common working class.
Yeah. No problem.
Yeah, for me, right, I'll only speak for myself. I can only do that.
Mm-hmm.
It's not about ethnicity. It's more about ideology. So if you've got two incompatible ideologies that are always in conflict, why have those two ideologies, or people that believe in those ideologies, try to integrate when there's no bloody way they're going to do it? Right?
Well, yes.
So forget the colour, it's the ideology. So for me, I know people that are black and I'm white, and they think like they're very sort of conservative and think like me. However, they would be called an Uncle Tom by other people from their ethnicity, which to me seems a little bit racist. It seems a little bit derogatory for their own. Supposedly, I put my fingers up and go brothers to call them that, and yet to me they seem more of a brother to me because they have the same ideology. And also, I'll just end on this one. When we have the football, and I see people of Pakistani, Indian, Chinese, and in the city I live in, and we're all and people wearing the England shirt, and we're playing the bloody Germans.
Yeah.
Well, there we are. We're all together, and it's fantastic. And I just sort of think to myself, why can we not be more like that more often?
Absolutely. But on the when the season starts up again, do the Millwall lot beat up the West Ham fans?
Yeah,
that's part of the fun. I do. All right, look, PK, thank you so much. Glad to get you back on here.
Julian, thank you.
Good man.
Much,
thank you. Thank you. Wonderful.
I do appreciate it, and I'm going to put the YouTube back on so I can hear.
Super. Yeah. We'll address some of the things you said with Omar. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Have
Super.
a good night. And good night, everyone else.
Nice one, PK. Bye-bye. Thank you. Yeah, that's PK making great points as ever, and I'll let you come in a minute, Omar. But I wonder if what PK said could be related to class identity. You were talking about class earlier on, Omar. And does everyone in the football stand munching their pie and mash or whatever it is these working class people like to do? Maybe that's what makes them feel united more so than race, more so than anything. And isn't it a class thing? And really, well, I know we some people are not going to like the Marxist overtones, but really the whole identity politics, the whole race issue, the whole Black Lives Matter issue that we've had recently, as relevant as some of it might be to the real Marxist or the real socialist, all these identities, male, LGBTQ, race, whatever it is, are all just masking the real identity around which we should unite, which is the fact that we are working class, and working class in the in the greater sense that we have to work for a wage, and really, if we stuck together, we might get a bigger chunk of that wage. But maybe that's for another night. Come back in, Triple T, as
Well,
I click through the comments.
well, one of the greatest things about this country is I think overall we have surpassed racism. We have classism, but the great thing about classism is that anyone can be middle class, anyone can be upper class, and anyone of any color and even any religion can be working class. So that is the assimilation that I've seen in this country. PK mentioned a lot of great things there, including his black friends and him and others being one, and even Man U, you have everyone supporting Man U and so many different cultures and religions, and it's great to see. But regarding assimilation, and we had your caller, the karate MMA champion, calling up, and people do say that black people assimilate more so than Asian people. And as far as I'm concerned, regarding assimilation, I don't want to assimilate with white people. I just don't want to assimilate with them. I don't want to assimilate with black people. And in fact, I don't want to even assimilate with brown people or Muslim people. I don't care for assimilation. As I've lived in this country, I was going to say as I came here, but being born in Peterborough, as I've lived my life in this country, there was no contract that I signed that stated that I must assimilate. I don't want to even assimilate with my own family. So that is something that people need to understand. Not everyone is like them. Not everyone wants to assimilate. And we live differently. You also mentioned something very interesting. Is it? Yes.
I was going to say, yet you still complain about racism. I think that's a comment aimed at you. You don't want to assimilate, but you complain about racism.
I don't complain about racism if you don't like me. If I'm sitting at the park and you don't sit next to me and you go and sit with other white people, I'm not going to complain about that. I am going to complain about the laws. You have racism if it's enshrined in law, and if there's double standards, that's what I'm going to complain about. I'm not complaining about you hating me. You can hate me as much as you want, or hate black people or hate white people. That's no concern of mine. My concern is the ratification of the laws and any injustice that takes place in this country. We have freedom, or we're meant to have freedom when it comes to matters of that nature. That is my complaint. But you cannot force anyone to assimilate. I shall not.
Fair enough. Do you think some groups assimilate? Well, you said that it's perceived that black people perhaps assimilate with white people easier. It does, than
but at the same time, who are the police stopping? At the same time, the more credulous they ostensibly are to be accepted and to assimilate, who are they stopping? The police have only stopped me twice in my life, and both times they were excellent, unbelievably polite, and unbelievably apologetic, and very, very affable and friendly and convivial. So if black people think they have assimilated, I'm happy for them. But I'm watching probably on a daily basis, even in England now, you have police officers dragging them to the ground. There's one on just now, actually, an hour before I came on, where a black man is on the ground and the officer has his knee on his neck. And I've seen many since George Floyd. So you have to really wonder, what does assimilation even mean overall? What does it mean? That we all hold hands and walk on the street? Are you not the same people that when you see a black person, you grab on to your purse, as they say, a little bit tighter, or you cross the road? So let's just be frank about these issues. We don't have to assimilate. White people shouldn't blame anyone else for not assimilating, nor do we blame them for not assimilating with us. When our grandparents moved into a town from up north in particular, especially the Asians, my grandfather was from Bolton. When he moved further down south, he realized that when he would buy a house, and some have said in a week, but before you knew it, the whole street was pretty much all the white people had moved. Why? What was he going to do that they had to move? They didn't want to assimilate with him.
Within a week.
Did they want to?
things happen
This
fast up
has
there.
been stated in a week, but let's just say in a year. Let's say in 5 years.
Okay.
Let's say in 10 years. They do move
Mm.
out because they saw an Asian or a black person, even at that time, moving in.
Well,
So who wasn't assimilating? Was it us at that time? No, we were simply just trying to live peacefully.
I don't know, Omar, but when white people move away, they call it white flight, and when they move back in, they call it gentrification. We just can't win.
Mm.
Do you
But what's
want? Do you
the
want us?
reason for
Do you want
moving?
us to live there or not? Look,
You can live wherever you want, but the fact that
as
you
people
white
get
people are
richer,
moving out, as if they get richer, even from rich areas, then
okay,
they're
look,
already living in rich areas. And
East London is the poorest part of London. It's where all the sewage drifted out towards the east. It's why the Huguenot immigrants arrived from France and Belgium 400 years ago, or whenever it was, fleeing persecution. That's where you get the Cockney accent from, is from a French accent. The Huguenots bettered themselves and moved out, and the Jews came in. And you had the Jews in East London who, when they made a better life for themselves, moved to North London, and now you've got Bangladeshis in East London. So immigration will
so
always
these
come in
cultures,
waves. As people do better, they move somewhere else, but they have remained in pockets. PK is asking, how can you have cohesion if we have no common ground, no common interests? I tried to highlight the financial interest and the benefit maybe of enjoying each other's culture, cuisine, of course. Fish and chips came to the East End via France. Someone is saying you are the problem. I don't know who that might be. We've got a lot of comments to get through. Dear Julian, your host seems to be contradicting himself. He first blamed me for not supporting Shamima Begum, despite I am from her colour and ethnicity, and now he says he doesn't care about race. Now, the big mistake you've made there, Asmil,
can I
is
respond to that? Can I respond?
first of all, I need to let him know that I'm the host and he's the guest. But
Okay.
you go for it. let's just clear that up. Okay.
Yeah. I'm glad you clarified that up. Sir, I was referring to people moving in. Now, ultimately, I do care, despite what you might think. I care for all people equally. So if this was a white girl, if Shamima was a white woman stuck there, I would have the exact same views. But you cannot deny we have the same experiences in this country. If you are of that color, we don't even know much of Asmil. It sounds like a Bangladeshi name. But especially if you have a culture, an Asian culture, and an Asian background, she is of you. That's your young sister. If you have the same faith. In Islam, they see each other as brothers and sisters. That's your young sister. You should be looking at her the same way that you would see a young white girl who's been trafficked from Romania, who's been tricked to come into this country, and you feel sorry and sad for her when you watch her on Sky One or whatever channel the programs come on nowadays. You should have the same solidarity and the same concern for her, and then more so because you are of that background. That's all I'm saying.
Yes, you were saying that you treat people differently considering their background, and that is a bit racist.
My point. See, you're missing my point here. Look, I can understand more. I have more. If we are the same faith, if we have the same culture, if we have the same background, if we were born and raised in the same country, and if our grandparents or fathers came to this country, naturally, I'm going to have a link that other white people won't understand. So if we have this, all these aforementioned cultures and the situations of our life, surely we're going to know a tiny bit more about this, about her life. And so naturally, I've expressed on your show that I would have the same concern and the same solidarity, but a tad more, if I'm being frank, with someone who looks like me, who is of my background, and who is born and raised where I'm born and raised, a tad bit more. But that doesn't mean that I don't respect the white young girl who is trafficked from Romania and from Spain, and who is here in this country against her will.
This is the thing,
and is enslaved in this country.
I think you think all white people are as unified as you are with your fellow brown people. Most people in England don't have anything to do with Romania, different culture, different language. They would look on a Romanian as a foreigner. You are seeing them as a fellow white person and imagining that there's this kind of racial solidarity that you've got in your mind, because I think you're a little bit, if you admit it, racist. PK is saying that he would love to chat to you. Sorry we couldn't arrange that tonight. We will one day. Why does he presume racism? We all have our cross to bear, and he is racist. Yeah, we're all a bit racist, but I think you think in very racial terms. Would that be fair to say?
I think that if you look in the mirror and you see a white person, and then you see a young girl who looks just like you regarding the color, and you can't feel anything for her, you can't think, oh yeah, hold on, this is a young girl who looks like me, who is from my background, perhaps.
Well,
if you're from Romania, I don't know where exactly.
Some people do. I don't know why you keep going on about Romania, but I take the point. And
but I think the Romania is. We can have some Romania. I don't know if any Romanians are listening, but the on the news they've mentioned Romania so many times. Poor girls are trafficked from that country many a time. And
this is somewhere where PK might agree with you actually. And I'm putting words in his mouth. Sorry, PK. I don't want to misrepresent you at all, but he often mentions about individuality of different ethnicities and this sort of idea of having a loyalty to one's own community. And PK saying that you're projecting, Omar. Possibly you are. Some people do have that mindset, and I think when you see these charity fundraisers of kids in Syria that are starving, very often they will choose the very blonde, fair-skinned looking children because a European audience will have more sympathy for a child like that rather than a darker skinned person. So maybe you're just acknowledging something.
And when you spoke about the 2PK,
look, Omar, I'm going to get PK back on the phone only because he's a special guest, and I'm going to try to arrange it so that you can hear him. You will have to let me know if you cannot. So PK, when you call, you're welcome back in, and we are going to try to get Omar to hear. Could you not hear him last time, Omar?
No, I could hear him. I think it's
but he couldn't hear you. We'll attempt it. PK, if you ring the number, we will attempt to link you lot up. I'll just do a little sound check. PK, are you there?
Hello.
Omar, can you hear PK?
Yeah,
I can, yes.
Omar, PK, can you hear Omar? Say hello, Omar.
Good evening, Omar.
Hello. Good evening. Can you hear me, sir?
Can you?
Hear you
testing?
Very clearly.
Yeah, speak loud and clear, and we'll hopefully get a conversation. Go for it, PK. What's your point to Omar?
Well, I was thinking some of the things he was saying. I mean, the way I look at things is there's nothing wrong with hang on. He just Omar, you just mentioned something that if someone in your own ethnicity group would have more understanding, was my interpretation of it. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, is that
not true?
No. Yeah. So there's nothing. Is there? I would say this to you. There's nothing wrong with group preference because it's your tribe. It's what you know. It's your experience. Okay. And I think, if you come from a foreign country to live in Great Britain, that you would probably find it more comfortable to reside in areas where there is more people who are of your ethnicity, of your ideology, of your ethnic group, for example. That would make sense, wouldn't it? Yeah,
of course. Of course. My point was regarding Azmal Muzammil, who was seemingly of Bangladeshi heritage. And we get this in our culture. Some people are more credulous more willing to criticize someone who looks like them. They just want to show white people, forgive me, that hey, we're like you. That, you know, they work so hard and they want to be like you. And yes, we hate her. We don't want her here. So they surpass the actual law. What is the law?
Hold on, Omar.
They're so busy.
Let PK back in. Let PK back in for a minute.
On that note, there's plenty of white people who feel the Black Lives Matter thing, for example, that feel very upset and ashamed of a past they had no part in.
Sorry, which guy?
He's saying there's people feel ashamed due to Black Lives Matter, but they didn't have a part in the crime. I'm talking about white guilt here, I think.
Yeah, white. Correct, Julian.
Okay.
Correct. Thank you for explaining.
Yeah, that's right.
Yes, white guilt. It's out there, but that's. I mean, no one can blame you for what happened, and I think no one should. White people shouldn't have guilt for perhaps what their ancestors did. Yes, white people did enslave black people, but white people also freed black people. So there's many good white people, and in fact, when you watch the marches, how many white people do you see? Even in '63, one of the biggest marches for civil rights, you had seemingly more white people out there than even black people. So that white guilt should, if you ask me, should be dissipated. My point regarding the culture I mentioned, and I'll rephrase this just in case you missed it. In my life, I've experienced many people who look like me, who are of my background, and you'll see them, and they just want to tell you what they think you want to hear. So they try to be more British than British people.
Yeah, but that's just what's the word I'm looking for, Julian? Help me out. Sycophant.
Sycophant. Okay, yeah, someone eager to please.
Yeah, and those types of mindset exist in all races because they want to be part of the in-group that is of the moment, that has the power of the moment.
Yeah.
And it takes a very strong mind to go against the in-group.
So I was sensing that with Asmal, and that's what I mentioned. But PK, let me ask you a question, if I may.
Please do.
I mentioned Romania, but let's just say all these countries, these young girls that are trafficked into the UK from all around the world, I'm sure, they are tricked, they are duped, and they end up here when they are 15 years old. Do you think, and we don't blame them for that, do you think something similar happened to that poor girl Shamima as she was tricked and groomed and ended up there at 15 years of age? Is that what happened? And should we look at her like that? Should we look at her as a victim or not?
Yes, I agree with you. I mean, I did say that earlier on to Julian. I think she was the word. I mean, I used the word hoodwinked.
Yes,
which is a British term.
That's a good term.
She was hoodwinked. She was 15. She was a child. However, and this is I'm going to use the however, but don't take this as gospel. This again, it's an observation from reports I've heard in the media. However, she did get older. She was there for a few years, and apparently, whether this is true or not, I do not know. If it is true, she became part of an enforcement gang within the area that she was living that enforced very, very strict Sharia law.
Well, it's Sharia.
You could argue at that point she has then not become. She's progressed from a child to an adult, and she's very aware of what she's doing.
And
no, but Sharia.
Or is she has no choice in her actions at that point?
Yeah, well, if I was duped, and if I ended up in a country like Syria, and if I realize, hold on, I've been tricked, I'm here, I'm married to this man, and this is the law of the land, what would I just stand up and say, look, what the heck? I'm not gonna, especially if you've been groomed, she couldn't just get up and say, hey, I want out of here. They would have killed her then and there. So she was in a very tough position. And
the thing is, with the point you've raised, is you undoubtedly could get out of any situation because you have a certain age with a certain life experience.
No, I meant when I was 15, a long time ago.
Cons and the odds, get yourself out of a dodgy situation, as I could. Whether she could or not, she, you know, I don't know. She was very young when she went over. However, I did mention in the comments to Julian, I think I mentioned on the text, Julian, was that the British government maybe has to set an example. And unfortunately, it may be right or wrong, depending on your point of view. Is this particular person that an example has to be made of? That if you decide to go against, you know, the homeland that is yours, I mean, let's be honest about it. This homeland is not a bad place. We're not oppressing people. We're not kicking the door down and throwing gays off roofs or beating up. You know, coppers aren't kicking the door down every day en masse and kicking in black people or Asian people or Chinese people. There isn't gangs of white youths going around kicking the shit out of black people.
Lynching mobs and stuff.
We are not living in a racist society. If fundamentally if an individual is racist, there's nothing you or I can do about it. But the state is definitely not racist. It doesn't have laws which discriminate against an individual race, colour or creed specifically.
No, yeah, good point indeed.
Prove that to us all now by going onto Google and providing a link to it.
No, I wholeheartedly
points as ever, mate. I'm glad you came back in for a second round.
So it's not that I want to disprove anybody's
point
of view. I agree with a lot of your other guest says. I agree with him. But I think we must delve deeper into the reasons why someone is not allowed back, or the reasons they go, and if the reasons they go are justified or not justified. I mean, it's not black and white. Pardon the pun.
You're right.
It's always areas of grey.
Exactly. PK.
Can I leave you on that?
Yeah, we're happy with that.
I'd love to hear views on what I've just said. Again, I'll go back onto YouTube to have a listen. Just give me 20 seconds.
We will. We'll have a little conclusion there. Thank you again for round 2.
Julian, thank
superb.
You very much for
Seconds out.
Program.
Well done, mate. Thank you.
Enjoyable.
Really appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, PK.
Right. Omar, I hope you were able to hear PK well enough, and I hope everyone else heard him. Yeah, just if you want to reflect on what PK said, and then we'll wrap it up. He made some relevant points. You cannot discriminate on race by law. There have been incidents like the Windrush generation who were let down, and many people blamed racism for that. But we're now addressing it, and I hope that justice will be done for that generation. And we live in a country where that is what the law states should happen. But any comments on what PK said? Yeah.
Well, not much agree with.
Omar, I'm struggling to hear Omar. I hope people are hearing me. I can't hear Omar, and there's no way of testing it. Just in the comments, do a little sound check. Are you still hearing me? We might have to wrap it up. Well, I think we've lost Omar. We've had PK wrapping the show up, and as I said, superb point. By law, you cannot discriminate based on race. By law, you cannot discriminate based on gender or sex. Yet apparently there's still a pay gap for whatever reason that may be. I don't know. We could examine that another night. But we're going to wrap things up here. I want to thank everybody that contributed in the chat, and PK for phoning in, and Omar. We will do it all again soon. This has been Lessons for Life, and we were here, and we are gone. Latest.